I thought there was a sequel to this movie, wasn't there?
No, thank God. So, Jim, what did you think of Godzilla 1998?
It's as dumb as I remembered. The one thing I will say about it, like, because it's a fine movie. It looks fine. Obviously, it's silly and schlocky, but it's a Roland Emmerich movie, so you gotta just kind of get past that fact, you know? Yeah. I will say, though, it felt longer than I remembered watching it.
It's a little over 2 hours, 2 hours 10 or some.
Yeah, whereas, like, I think Jurassic Park was, like, 2 hours? Or 2
hours
and
this was
8 minutes.
A few minutes longer, I think.
Yeah, but Jurassic Park felt shorter to me than Godzilla did.
Well, it is.
Godzilla's by 2 minutes. Yeah, I know. But I mean, I meant like a lot shorter.
You say that, but no. See, I disagree because The Lost World has its climax, and then it continues on for another half hour. That makes the movie feel longer than it is, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
The Lost World feels like a 2.5 hour movie, even though it's not.
That's true. But you know, though, like, as silly as this movie is, like, it's an enjoyable movie. Like, if this movie was going to play at a theater, I'd go see it. Oh, yeah? Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, I mean... Yeah, this is an incredibly dumb movie. I don't hate it.
I like this more than Independence Day.
Oh, I see. I don't. But Okay, so a few things. One, and I know I said this earlier, but I just want to reiterate. I am not going to be that guy that complains about this because it's not a good Godzilla movie. I'm looking at it as just like a movie. Like so I don't want to be like Jurassic Park 3, again, I'm bringing it up again. Part of the reason why I hate that movie as much as I do is it's a sequel to Jurassic Park, one of my favorite films of all time. If that were just a standalone movie, I would think it's terrible, but I wouldn't, like, utterly hate it. You know?
Yeah.
That's why I hate the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels, because that first movie's so good, and then they just shat all over it with the second one. But yeah, so Godzilla is dumb. I mean, that's a non-controversial statement, but I think the most frustrating thing about it is that almost every character is completely wrong. And I don't necessarily mean the casting. I mean, the casting's part of it because Broderick is just miscast, but all of the main characters are like comic relief side characters. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Everyone is like that wacky side character. Animal is the only one that really kind of works in that role for me, where I actually do think he's like a good comedic side character. But it's also weird because he's acting along people who are almost equally goofy.
Yeah, well then it's also weird that you're introduced to a bunch of characters who are seemingly competent at their jobs and they know what they're talking about, other than Kathy Griffin lookalike, but like even then she's still seemingly good at her job.
And Audrey is utterly incompetent, I guess. So I mean, yeah, she's a Me Too victim, so maybe you can't hold it against her.
But like none of those characters do anything, and like no like actual quote unquote scientific stuff happens in the movie other than Matthew Broderick finding out that it's pregnant.
Yeah.
They're not trying to destroy this thing or figure out how to stop it with science. They're like, okay, let's keep on bringing bigger guns. Okay, let's keep on trying to trap it somewhere.
That's true. It is incredibly dumb that, this plan didn't work, and then the next time... I mean, it's not as big a deal because, at least at that point, Matthew Broderick isn't part of the military operation. But when we cut back to the military going after Godzilla again, and they literally just do the same plan again, it's shockingly dumb.
From the standpoint or viewpoint of like an animal looking to lay eggs somewhere, why would you go to like the busiest fucking place on the planet? How come you weren't sticking around in French Polynesia and laying some eggs there? You know?
Okay, listen, I've never given birth, but I am going to, for the purposes of my response to that, I'm going to compare it to going to the bathroom. Maybe he's on his journey. Maybe he's on his way to Greenland, and suddenly he just needed to go.
Yeah, can't hold it anymore.
To quote Jeff Goldblum from the first Jurassic Park, when you gotta go, you gotta go. Maybe he like fully intended to like get to the middle of nowhere, but then shit. I don't know. That to me isn't a problem. I do think it's as for what I like about the movie, some of the raptor stuff I kind of like. Some of that is fun. I love Jean Reno.
Yeah, he's my favorite part of the movie.
Oh, absolutely. He's a very fun character. And like I said about Roland with The Lost World, deserving of a far better movie than he's in. This guy could be like a French James. You could just have like a James Bond type movie with this guy, and I would watch it, assuming we have a different director and different writers. Of the like adult Godzilla scenes, I'm trying to think of like what I actually thought was kind of neat, and I don't think any of the adult Godzilla stuff is that great. I guess I like the ships going down when you don't really see them. That's always good.
The lead up to actually seeing Godzilla is pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's better than when we actually see him. This movie doesn't have much of a legacy, does it? It's not really a well-remembered... It's not one that people go back to. You won't find it on TV all the time. Like Independence Day, you'll find on TV all the time. So what is this movie's legacy? For a lot of people, a lot of Godzilla fans, this is the movie that proved that America couldn't make a Godzilla movie. Which some people say is still going. I think we've gotten a couple decent ones. Nothing great. This is also one of the legacies of this film. Is one of the weirdest musical mashups in history. Come With Me by Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page. It is heard briefly in the scene when Audrey is trying to counterfeit the ID badge. Mm-hmm. And then it's of course the credits song. It is the music of, I mean it's re-recorded, but it's the music of Kashmir by Led Zeppelin with Puff Daddy, aka P Diddy, aka Diddy, aka Sean Combs, aka Sean Puffy Combs, whatever the fuck he wants to go by at this moment, rapping over it. I kind of love the song. I do. First of all, I had this soundtrack as a kid. I should probably say that. But yeah, I always liked this song. I also have like fond memories of it because I remember, and I didn't see this in person because the first Yankees game I went to in person, because I'm not from New York, I did eventually live there, but the first Yankees game I went to was when I was on vacation, was in 2003. I'm sure Jeter had moved on at that point, but I do remember from watching TV hearing that this song was definitely his walk-up song for a year or two.
Oh.
And again, going back to, is this the peak of New York City? Derek Jeter, the New York Yankees. Puff Daddy was still... He was still a musician. He wasn't just like businessman, mogul guy. Like he was still like a relevant musician. Just throwing that out there. I mean, another thing, maybe we could put New York City peak a year or two earlier because then we would still have the Notorious B.I.G. He was dead at this time.
Oh, it's funny because again, I agree with you. But to kind of cut you off and switch some tracks here, this might have been peak New York. But nobody thought that this was peak cinema. In America...
Oh, shit, no.
And in the States, it only grossed... I think I'm reading it now. It says it only made $136 million in total over 8 weeks. Internationally, the film took an additional $242.7 million for a combined worldwide total of $379 million.
It's funny. I do remember when I saw this as a kid, this was an age where, I was, 5 years old when this comes out. Every movie I saw back then I liked. I hadn't yet developed critical thinking, and I wasn't like, hey, this movie wasn't very good. What is this? But I remember when I saw this, first of all, I was like so excited to see a Godzilla movie because I liked Godzilla. I loved that we were going to see one that didn't have the mouths not matching what people were saying. I remember teaser trailers. I remember there's this teaser trailer with people going on a museum tour of the Museum of Natural History. They get to like a T-Rex skeleton. They're like, yeah, this is one of the biggest predators that ever lived. Boom, a giant Godzilla foot comes down and crushes it. And it's like, that's awesome. I remember a lot of advertising for this. I remember Taco Bell Godzilla commercials. In my universe, this movie was the biggest movie ever. Then I also remembered noticing that my parents said that, oh, Godzilla that you saw last week at the movie theater, it's already gone. Like, what the fuck? Like, this movie was like, this was like almost like a harsh realization for me that, my world, the world that I live in, isn't necessarily the world that other people live in, where maybe people just don't give a shit about Godzilla, and that was like a bit of a wake-up call, I guess you could say, but I don't know.
It is weird, but I guess there just wasn't really much of a market for giant lizard disaster movie, unless it was something like Jurassic Park. This movie seemed to be a little too over the top. It had
just too dumb.
Exactly.
dumb,
It was too stupid, and people weren't falling for it, right? But I remember, like, when I was a kid, this was the Godzilla that I knew and grew up with. And it wasn't until I was, like, maybe 12 or 13, I was like, oh, yeah. I knew that Godzilla existed as, like, a Japanese film series, but I'd never seen them. I'd never even sought them out. For me, this was Godzilla. I don't know, yeah, it's weird watching it again and just being like, wow, when I was a kid, I must have been fucking stupid. You know, because I really liked this movie when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, like, the design of the Godzilla, they changed it. I think they changed it for the worse. I do at least appreciate that they kept the roar, because that's as iconic as anything. And you know, watching a Godzilla movie where he doesn't have that roar would just be wrong. I will say, and this probably should have been brought up in the Lost World discussion, but Jurassic Park seems to me, you know, I talked about how Spielberg's post Jurassic Park, or really his post Schindler's List blockbusters, just don't have the same feel. I would almost say blockbusters just don't have the same feel after Jurassic Park. Now, I'm not saying that Jurassic Park is like a work of art or like the most intelligent movie ever, but there's like some thoughtfulness put into it, and then it's like we get to Independence Day is just dumb, Godzilla's just dumb, the Transformers are just dumb.